And then just want to know, what are your thoughts on whether or not Epstein killed himself or was killed?
There were a lot of anomalies that night, but I think it's kind of a red herring. I try not to focus on it because the important thing is getting justice for the victims. That's the important thing. And people focus on that. Vice called me or emailed me and wanted me to talk about that. And I said, I don't really want to talk about that. That's kind of a red herring. I mean, there's a lot of anomalies that night, and you could definitely make a case for he was murdered or someone helped him kill himself. But the most important thing is getting justice for these victims. And we saw last weekend, Virginia Jeffery committed suicide. But there's a lot of victims that commit suicide. As I said earlier, their suicide rate is 3 times higher than the general population. And all the girls that Epstein molested over the years and his fellow perpetrators molested. I mean, think of the suicides and the psychological carnage there. We have to put a foot down and say, this has got to stop. I've been researching these networks for 23 years, as I said, and what I'm seeing is I've seen cover up after cover up after cover up. And the thing about Epstein Justice is if we can somehow stop these type of networks, we will actually prevent thousands of children from getting molested. So I look at Epstein Justice is probably the only real preventive NGO that's out there.
Well, thank you so much, Nick. Really appreciate talking to you.
Likewise.
And you should come back on, because I'm sure if we did a live show, we'd have the audience would have tons of questions. You'd have to field a lot of conspiracy theory questions, but
I want to say one thing about conspiracy theory. In 1967, the CIA came out with a dispatch, a quote unquote dispatch. And it was about people that didn't believe the Warren Commission. The majority of Americans didn't believe the Warren Commission in the 60s, like the majority of Americans don't believe the Warren Commission now. And the CIA said, we're going to have to position these people as, we'll call them conspiracy theorists. And then there was a number of rationales of why conspiracy theorists were negative. And prior to that dispatch, the Washington Post and New York Times used conspiracy theory or conspiracy theorist once a year. But now it was just like an exponential escalation of those two words. So in a way, when people just write something off as a conspiracy theory, they're essentially drinking the Kool-Aid without thinking too much about it.
Right. Yeah, which I referred to that earlier about how lots of times conspiracy theories are just, they're just the reality of things that were conspiracies. But it's definitely used as a pejorative to dismiss people as crazy or outside the norm.
It's unfortunate that, and those two words, whoever in the CIA wrote that dispatch, the quote unquote dispatch, their family should be getting lots of royalties because that dispatch has really paid off with the CIA.
Anything else you want to make sure that we mention? This has been really great. And we just scratched the surface, it feels like, but
I want to talk about Epstein Justice. And this is why Epstein Justice is needed. According to the Centers for Disease Control, 25% of underage girls and 5% of underage boys have been molested in the United States. So that's over 50 million. And most people in the field think that that's a major underestimation, especially with the boys. But if you just go with the CDC numbers, you've got over 50 million Americans have been molested as minors. But the Department of Health and Human Services gives us some pretty staggering numbers too. According to the Department of Health and Human Services, 240,000 to 325,000 women and children are sexually trafficked every year in the United States. And if you split the difference and just go 300,000 and go with there are 300,000 children and women that are trafficked every year in the United States, according to the Bureau of Justice Statistics, only 523 people that trafficked children in 2023 were convicted. And then there's millions of hours of child rape material on the internet. Millions. And in 2023, there was 1,904 people in the United States that were convicted of producing child rape material or dispensing child rape material. And if you look at those numbers, a fraction of 1% of people that are trafficking girls and those that are making child rape material are ever arrested. And that's kind of very similar to the Epstein network, because only Ghislaine Maxwell went down for that. And Epstein trafficked underage girls for 25 years. There were a lot of pimps and there were a lot of perps over the course of those 25 years, and only Maxwell went down. And and she's a fraction of 1% of all the perps and pimps in the Epstein network. So with Epstein Justice, this isn't just about Epstein, it's about justice for everyone. There are millions of abuse victims out there. And how do you think that they're going to react or feel if the Department of Justice is unresponsive to the perps in the Epstein case, a proven trafficking case? That gives no hope to a lot of victims that have been abused. And that's another reason why Epstein Justice is so important. Survivors in the United States, the millions of survivors in the United States who will never see justice, should see justice here so that can give them hope so they can come forward.
We'll definitely link to that, your website. Are you working on anything besides, the work you're doing at the organization is very important. Are you working on another book?
I was writing an article today about Virginia Jeffery.
Oh, nice.
And I really want to get an article out there about her because there's been so much misinformation. People are saying the Mossad murdered her, and people are saying that she is actually alive and she's with Epstein. So I want to write an article that kind of sets the record straight about Virginia, because she was a truly heroic person, and she ultimately ended up in a bad situation, and she had a tremendous amount of damage, and it's very, very tragic.
Right. And I saw that you on another show, you were on a podcast, and you said,
these guys can have steak every night and then they go for forbidden fruit. Sometimes that's what their thing is. They get increasingly violent. I've talked to a number of victims that have been beat up. I've talked to a victim of Epstein's. She was a little girl. She was given to a prime minister who beat her up. That's how he got off. A prime minister of a country.
Can you elaborate on that?
Well, the Department of Justice really let down these Epstein victims. Maria Farmer says that she went to the FBI in 1996. Now, if that's true, Virginia shouldn't have been trafficked by Jeffrey Epstein. And she would have had to have dealt with a lot of the abuse. She had been heavily sexually abused before she met Epstein. But she was trying to turn a new leaf. When she fell into Maxwell's web, she had a book about massage therapy, and she was working at a spa. She was trying to turn her life around. She'd gone through unbelievable trauma, had been through various foster care homes. She really wanted to turn her life around. And then Maxwell glommed onto her and took her to Epstein, and they quickly, predators, the thing about predators is they know how to prey. And I'm sure that they could see that Virginia was damaged in certain ways that they could capitalize on. So the system, aka Department of Justice, FBI, let all those victims down. And even if Epstein wasn't reported in 1996, he was certainly reported in 2005. And all the girls that were molested by Epstein at all from 2005 to 2019 over the next 14 years, that's on our law enforcement. That's on the Florida law enforcement. That's on our federal law enforcement. All those girls that were molested in those 14 years, and there were a lot of them, that's on our law enforcement.
Well, thank you so much, Nick Bryant. I really appreciate the work you're doing. I've started your book on the Franklin book. It's great, and I'm looking forward to finishing it. And then I'll have to read your DC Madden book, too.
And I came out with a Watergate book last year.
Oh, yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
But what's more important to me, I would much rather have people go to EpsteinJustice.com than buy my books. I mean, I don't have a problem with people buying my books,
sure.
But Epstein Justice.
That's your priority.
That's my priority, yes.